Hello there my Jedi and Sith friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your friend and your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. Hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are in this galaxy. We have some really exciting Star Wars offerings just around the corner, but today we're diving into the past. A surprising bit of news that concerns a topic which we've spoken about once or twice already this week, but today we have an even crazier update for it. It concerns Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the duo responsible for the movie adaptation of Project Hail Mary. But in the Star Wars universe, the guys originally put in charge of Solo: A Star Wars Story, before they were fired by Kathleen Kennedy due to, quote, creative differences, and before Ron Howard was brought on board. Now they're in the news again, because they're being interviewed for their latest, enormously successful and fun sci-fi outing, featuring the incredible Ryan Gosling of course. But in a brand new interview, they were asked about their cancelled version of Solo, their original take on the film. Now before we dive into the juicy stuff, the meat and potatoes, I should just preface with this. When people talk about Phil Lord and Chris Miller's Solo, they often over-glamorize something which was incomplete. Some of their ideas did make it to the final version, for instance some aspects of Han meeting Chewie for the first time, but a lot of what they wanted to do was disjointed. There's this notion going around that their version was more daring and took more risk, but the truth is, it's more complicated than that. For one, we'll never know for certain because a lot of details were kept under wraps, but what we do know is that behind the scenes it was such a mess. This is corroborated by tons of frustrated cast and crew. Even Ron Howard himself spoke about it last August. And for those of the opinion that Solo: A Star Wars Story kind of ruined the character, which I don't agree with, but there are people who say that, Lord and Miller's version was supposedly going to be worse. They clashed with a lot of creatives at Lucasfilm, including those who wanted to stay consistent with canon. For a long time now, nearly a decade, we've heard about this rumored scene that would have really done damage to the story and reputation of Han Solo. They're known for their style of improvisation, but with Solo, it just didn't work. Lawrence Kasdan was getting frustrated, Kathleen Kennedy was getting frustrated, and even the briefer scenes were stretching far too long in terms of time to film them. It was not a happy process, and just like Tony Gilroy came in to clean up Rogue One, Ron Howard said, quote, I looked at the footage and I saw the problem. There was a studio that liked the script the way it was and wanted to make a Star Wars movie, but there was a disconnect early on in terms of tone, and Lucasfilm was not convinced that Phil Lord and Chris Miller were right for the job. But you know what guys, maybe Kennedy and Howard are wrong about this. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But after their new movie, which is getting high acclaim, Star Wars fans are thinking about this. And the duo, in a new interview with Josh Horowitz, were asked about their relationship with a galaxy far, far away, and they begin by saying they are not interested in returning to Star Wars at the moment. And here's the quote, I wouldn't say the emotional wounds are too deep, it's just that we're at this precise moment. We're releasing a movie in theaters that's original. And here's the thing, of all of the directors that were let go for, quote, creative differences, they're one of the few to call Kathleen Kennedy out by name.
Kathy, I apologize.
But now that she stepped down as Lucasfilm CEO, maybe there is a future for them in the galaxy far, far away, with Dave. At the moment though, they don't seem too keen to return, and can you blame them? They had an awful, awful experience. Like I say though, they were younger back then. If they ever were to return, maybe they would do things differently. But the sad thing with Solo is that despite its low box office, despite it being the only Star Wars movie to lose money the way it did, it was actually pretty inoffensive. It was a ton of fun, had so many great characters, and honestly, I see why fans to this day are calling for a Solo Part 2, especially the stuff between Kira and Maul. There's always a possibility in the Lando project. I don't know if Dave Filoni still wants to make it. As Kathleen Kennedy said, many of those movies on the roster are down to Dave. Their fates lie in his hands. But aside from their comments about their unwillingness to return, Lord and Miller also revealed they were originally signed up to make a trilogy of Solo movies, so not just one. That's a pretty enormous revelation, and kind of explains the extent of their frustration, because it means they weren't just fired from one standalone, they were fired from the promise of a Star Wars trilogy. So, in a really weird sense, and this is just a coincidence, Solo was treated in the same way as Boba Fett and Kenobi. Put on the shelf, promised more stories, but they never happened. Originally, Boba Fett was going to be a movie, maybe a trilogy. Obi-Wan was definitely going to be a trilogy before it was turned into a TV show. And with all of these, there is an argument to be made that they should do sequels, whether it's Book of Boba Fett Season 2, a lot of promise with that one despite the quality issues with the first season. I know a lot of fans want a Kenobi Part 2, and before the hunt for Ben Solo, one of the big Star Wars fan movie campaigns was hashtag Make Solo 2 happen, which just got even bigger thanks to Project Hail Mary. All week I've been seeing fans say, why didn't Phil Lord and Chris Miller get to make their version? Another one of their great contributions to the final product was the opening chase sequence. So they're all about the fun, and as we saw from their latest sci-fi movie, they know how to shape good chemistry, funny banter, and improvise a good back and forth. But I think Phil and Chris are in a very different place in their careers at the moment. That was over a decade ago. It was probably a huge learning curve. They went away, they kind of mastered their craft, got better at those aspects which they might have felt insecure about, and maybe in the future if they do return to Star Wars, it'll be a very different scenario. But with this trilogy stuff, a part of me wonders if there was any overlap between the Legends Han Solo trilogy and what Disney Lucasfilm wanted to do. Were they going to follow the same kind of parameters that Anne Crispin did? Because she was given very specific instructions, notably where the story was going to start and end, with Han and Chewie at the Mos Eisley Cantina in A New Hope. I wonder if Phil and Chris were tasked with the same job. And isn't it just a bit ironic that Phil Lord and Chris Miller adapted an entire book and made an incredible film, but were fired from the company that said, we don't have any source material, after relegating and neglecting the entire expanded universe? They just proved you can do it, and in the process, please millions of fans. If Lucasfilm decided to adapt Young Jedi Knights, or Heir to the Empire, or any of those other stories, I think both the studio and the brand would be in such a different place, a much better place. But like I said, my friends, Lord and Miller were originally going to do a Han Solo trilogy. That's an enormous bit of news, considering their version of Solo has become a huge what if. After Project Hail Mary, their cut of Solo looks even more compelling. We shouldn't jump the gun to say it was going to be perfect, but it does make us question the narrative put forward by Kathleen Kennedy, all of Lucasfilm, and Ron Howard. And this is not the first time these two have tried to defend themselves and give their version of events. In 2022, they flat out said, with their version of Solo, they didn't want to take the predictable route. They wanted to fill in gaps we weren't aware of, and quote, the stuff we don't quite realize yet. Yes, it might have been dramatic on set. Yes, Lawrence Kasdan might have been upset, but it does make you wonder how the entire thing would have looked if it had come to fruition. I don't think it would have done much for Solo's box office, but the overall fan reception might have been different. But what do you guys think? What do you make of Lord and Miller's new comments? How do you think their version would have played out? And would you have wanted to see an entire Solo trilogy? Let me know down below, my dear friends, and if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. May the Force be with you, always.